This is going to be a quick video to kind of talk about, some best practices or tips to help you navigate the scripts area within FileMaker a little bit more efficiently. It's been requested a few times that maybe I could show how I do mine and kind of see if any of that is helpful to other people. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that, and I've watched a few on other people and how they do theirs and adopted some of theirs. So let me just kind of walk you through a few things. So the first thing is I'm going to suggest that you use these separators and you use these folders extensively, and also decide how you're going to use these. Folders give you a great way to group things together as far as things that make sense logically within your application. For instance, I have a folder here for login, and inside it I keep all my scripts related to the login process for the application that I'm building, whatever that may be at the time. Well, another function of using that script folder is that any of the scripts that you place within that folder that are set to be visible in the scripts menu, they show up as if they are a submenu, which can be very handy in your application if that's the functionality you're looking for. So for instance, if I'm in an application here and I go to the scripts menu, you'll see that I have a login item. This is actually my folder that we're seeing, and then we're looking into the folder and seeing all the different scripts that are set to allow visibility. So you'll notice that I had 3 scripts in that login folder, but only one is visible. So I can show you how that works. Probably you've found that feature already, but in case you haven't, if you right-click on a script, you can choose to include it in the scripts menu. Or if it's already included in the scripts menu, which scripts are by default, the choice that you see in the right click would be exclude from the scripts menu. So if I were to exclude the login script from the scripts menu, now when I go back to my application, you'll see login no longer has anything visible there. Okay, so if I go and fire my thing back up, there's nothing I can select within there. Now navigation does have things that I can select. Now, why is login itself showing up, but nothing within login showing up? Well, to answer that, we just need to jump back over and take a look at that scripts workspace again. Okay, so the answer is that anything that goes in that scripts workspace, and that includes your folders that you create, can be visible within the scripts menu. So in this particular case, if I right click on my folder itself and look, I have the option to exclude it from the scripts menu, which means that by default, it is being included. So if I exclude it and I go back to my application, you'll see that it's no longer there. If I go back and change that back, you'll see that it is there, and that's actually quite useful at times. So I can just include it in the scripts menu. There we go. Now, I could exclude that, but still include a script that's within that. And then what you see is you see that script itself being its own item. So it really just depends how you're wanting your script place menu to look in your finished application, but just know that you can enable or disable the visibility of any of those items within there. Now, separators don't count, they don't really matter, but certainly everything else you can. The other thing that I was going to mention is that you can just bypass folders altogether if you don't feel like that they're actually bringing any value to you, and you could just use these separators to separate out the individual scripts. But my advice is to bunch the stuff up and bunch it up as you go. Okay, that way, that way you're kind of creating sort of organized chaos as you go, and there's a lot less cleanup to do later when you're getting ready to launch that product, to your employees or organization, or maybe even you're going to sell it to somebody. It gives you a way to clean that up a little bit better. You're organized as you go. Another thing that I do a lot is you'll notice, for instance, I have some scripts that are called like 1 and 2, and I'll purposely name them that way because they're not a script that's going to show up in the scripts menu. I'm going to hide that from the scripts menu so I can name it anything I want. But I want it to make sense to an admin or a developer that this is step 1 and this is step 2. Okay, and so typically what I'll do is within step 1, I will do a few things, okay, and then I'll have a step 2. Now, the step 2 is either triggered by some kind of conditional statement at the end of step 1, or it might be triggered by something in the user interface itself. So in this particular case, that's what I'm doing. For instance, if I go here and I choose reports, okay, I can see that it took me straight to this screen. It jumped straight into this field and plugged in a very specific value into this field. And now it's waiting on the user to choose a report type and click the button. Okay, so the clicking of the button in this case is step 2. So if we go back to scripts, you'll see how this works. I will typically run a script that takes me to the layout I want, clears certain values, inserts certain values, whatever, any kind of setup work that I need to make that screen ready to go for that user. I will usually do that in the first step. And then in the second step is typically when they actually want to continue that process. So in this particular case, it would be when they click the Generate Report button. So that's how I'm using script 2. Another way to use scripts like that, a lot of times what I'll do is in the first script, I'll have a number of things that they do, and then I might present them with, a choice. Maybe that choice, so say this is a report, that choice might be a custom dialog, and that dialog might be saying, do you want to print this or do you want to export this? And if they click on the print button, it runs one script, and I'll call that weekly report print, or weekly report export, whatever. But I try to keep my naming pretty straightforward so that anybody else who came along and picked this up, they could figure out what I'm doing. The other thing I would recommend is always adding lots of comments to your code, to your scripts. But that's more of a best practices for actual coding of your application. But just wanted to make sure, kind of cover how these the scripts menu work and how to keep this stuff organized and get it organized as you go, so that the users can see what you want them to see. Now you'll notice that I have a script here called Go to Employees, and it's visible. I don't want that. I don't want them to be able to go to employees. I wouldn't want an employee just to be able to go to an employee screen and see all the other employees and their sensitive data. So again, that's another example where I'm going to go to that particular folder, and I am going to right click on that and exclude it. But I also need to exclude that script because otherwise that will still show up. See that? So I need to exclude that script itself. And then what I end up with is my login script only, or whatever interface options that I want to give the user show up in my scripts menu. So that's just a quick kind of rundown of some things that you can do with your script menu, organization wise. Of course, if you do the folder thing, once you've done that, you can move these around. That becomes very useful. You can rename them, all those great things. But the main thing is I like to group them by their function, what they bring to the application. Maybe you want to group them. You could also use these folders and group them by, steps in a process. Um, there's any number of ways you could do it, but those are just a couple of things that I like to do in my applications and kind of keep things organized as I go.